Welcome to A Walk in the Park with Animal Friends. Today we've got Sam from Joii.
Hi.
Hi Sam, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Patricia. So I'm Sam Webster. I'm the Director of Clinical Operations at Joii Pet Care. Joii Pet Care is an app providing affordable and accessible pet care to every pet owner in the UK. And we do this through three main ways. We do this with our free of charge symptom checker. So you can access that for everything from itchy skin to upset tummies. If you answer a few simple questions, we'll be able to tell you how you need to help your pet with their problem. We also have free of charge nurse clinics where our wonderful nursing team can help you with everything from behaviour and training through to grooming your pet, through to what diet they should be eating. And our 24/7 available veterinary consultations online, which for Animal Friends insurance customers are completely free.
Lovely, thanks Sam. And we're going to talk all things healthy pet today, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So let's kick off. You were talking about skin there. So let's just start with some of the basics for cats and dogs. Can you tell me a bit about the fur types that cats and dogs have? Why do they molt?
Oh, that's a good question. Really, all fur is the same. It's the same as us having hair. We all have slightly different lengths or colours or textures, but it's just a way that the body keeps itself warm. And for pets, that happens all over. They don't wear clothes like we do to keep ourselves warm. They have that coat. Some pets who are bred for kind of colder climates will have what we know as a double coat. So there's the longer hair on the outside and then that shorter, denser coat underneath that really keeps the airflow nice and low by their body to keep them toasty. So breeds like huskies who are bred to be out in the cold weather of Canada. Why do they molt? Well, because everybody molts. I'm sure you and I do as well when we brush our hair, not our teeth. But hair is a growing, living thing, and it only lasts so long. So it has a several-week cycle, at which point the root of the hair dies off, it falls out, and it is replaced by a new one. Things that can affect how fast they molt or how much they molt. The main thing is changes in the season and the temperature.
Okay.
So if you've got a cat or dog, you might notice kind of spring as their thicker winter coat is starting to shed, a lot of hair around the place.
Yep.
And then almost the opposite in autumn as that thinner coat from the summer starts to get replaced with the thick coat again. Although actually with pets living indoors in the central heating and our kind of more regulated temperatures, they can shed like crazy all year round.
Okay. So then what's kind of classed as normal molting, or is that just per breed? Is that just per animal?
Yeah, how long is a piece of string, I think. I lose a lot of hair myself on a regular basis. I actually am surprised to have any left on my head, whereas other people don't lose any at all. And pets are the same. I think what's normal for your pet is what you're used to seeing on a regular basis. And if you suddenly see that they're shedding 1,000 times more than they usually would, or actually they're not shedding at all and their coat's starting to look a little thick and tangly, that's when you should worry.
Lovely. And then kind of staying in that region, scratching.
Yes.
When should an owner be worried about scratching? So what's kind of normal levels, or what are the signs that you need to look out for?
Yeah, we all like to scratch and itch occasionally, and our pets are no different. They have thick coats, so things get stuck in there. I know you've got Skye, who's a little bit shorter coated, but she loves to go out and explore, and I'm sure she gets things stuck between her toes or in her ears when she's sticking her head in bushes, having a look around.
Yeah.
So it's really normal for them to have a little bit of scratch to dislodge that, or if something's a bit itchy. When you should worry or start to think about talking to your vet is when that gets more frequent. So we'd kind of scale itching on a scale of 1 to 5. 0 is never, which I don't think ever happens for any pet.
Yep.
1 is that occasional itch where they just need to get themselves sorted and get rid of that itchy feeling. And then it starts to scale up. So a 2 or a 3 is when you're starting to notice that's more often. It's a daily thing. And actually your pet will maybe stop what they're doing to focus on itching and making themselves feel better. You hit a 4 and a 5 when it's really disturbing their daily activities. Okay. So a 4, your pet might be eating and have to stop because they need to scratch and itch. They might be going on a walk and they need to sit down and do that. Lick their tummy, scratch an ear.
Yeah.
At a 5, it's disturbing their sleep and their normal patterns, and you'll start to see them get grumpy and really irritated with it. And usually alongside that, you'll also see signs of a skin problem. So it'd be really, really rare for a dog to be itching and not actually be causing kind of damage with their nails. Same for cats as well. But you'll also see the causes of that. So you'll see sores, scabs, cuts, maybe oozy bits of skin if they're infected. So at that point, you really need to be seeking veterinary care.
Yeah. So you just touched on skin conditions there. What are some of the most common causes for skin conditions?
Skin conditions are one of the top 5 things we see in veterinary space, and I'm sure you do with animal friends as well. And there's so many different causes, but there's a couple of really key causes. They are different for dogs and cats. For dogs, one of the most common problems is what we call atopic dermatitis, which comes under 1,000 different names, but really it's allergic skin disease. Okay. It tends to fall into one of 2 categories, and there's a lot of overlap with pets. Sorry. So they're usually either allergic to something in the environment, like a pollen, a bit like us having hay fever, but they tend to get itchy rather than sneezing. Grasses, trees, they can be allergic to each other. They can be allergic to us in the same way we can be allergic to them. Yeah.
That's so sad.
Isn't it? Very rare, usually things in the environment outside rather than us. And then the other thing that can be a problem is food. So we're seeing this increase slowly, that food allergies are causing problems, particularly with the massive range of diets out there and the sheer number of ingredients that are in there. So everything from gluten to certain proteins like beef or chicken. Most pets will have some combination of food and environmental allergies. So it's just finding what works and what the problems are for your pet.
Yeah, because Skye has some small allergic reactions to different things, but really bizarre things. So like gravy bones or pig's ears, things like that. So, but luckily she doesn't have a severe reaction to it. It's just really minor. So you then go, okay, just don't feed her that in the future.
And that's how simple it can be. Figure out what your triggers are for your pet and don't let her be exposed to them, avoid them. And a couple of things you've said there, it'll be one ingredient that is popping out in all of those different formulated treats. Pig's ears aren't just pork, they're likely to have some kind of preservative and drying agent in. Same for the gravy bones. Some of the most common ingredients our pets are allergic to are things like pork and beef.
Okay.
Gluten is on there, wheat, but not as common as people think. A lot of people trying to have gluten-free diets for their pets. It's often not the trigger. They can be allergic to shellfish and fish and even dairy. So
so just as weird and wonderful as our allergies are with food, you can have exactly the same for dogs.
And like Skye, it can be a mild reaction. You avoid it and not a problem, or it can be really severe and life-changing.
Yeah. So what about cats then?
Cats can have allergic skin disease, particularly kind of Abyssinian and Devon Rex breeds, but their most common trigger for skin issues is actually flea allergies.
Okay.
So people will immediately go, oh, I don't have fleas. I treat my cat for fleas. Fleas are out there in the wild. So if your pet walks outside, at some point they come into contact with them. You know, hedgehogs, birds, squirrels, they all have them. They're out there in the environment. Yeah. What it actually takes to trigger a skin allergy reaction for a cat is not having fleas living in their fur and regularly being there and coming home, which we're all doing a very good job of trying to avoid.
Absolutely. It just makes me itch when I think about them.
I know. One of those topics, isn't it? But all it can take for some cats is one bite. So that could be a flea outside in the garden, hopping on, having a nibble and hopping off again. So you might never see fleas at home, but they can actually cause a lot of damage.
Okay. And then what about things, so I've seen with some of the dogs that have the facial folds and stuff like that. What are some of the things that happen in that space?
So facial folds on dogs, brachycephalic dogs, so those with the kind of shorter nosed faces, particularly French bulldogs, other bulldogs, Shar-Peis, those kind of breeds, they are very, very prone to allergic skin disease. So it is that process of their body overreacting to something that triggers an allergic process that is causing the issues. But in those skin folds, there's 2 pieces of skin and it's trapped together and there's no air getting in there. So actually that process happens and there's nothing to stop it. And you don't notice until a little bit later down the line, usually when your dog's having a scratch, at which point it's got all moist and sticky, and I know this is horrible, but that's really itchy and irritating for your pet then. So for those pet owners that own those breeds, I would really urge that you're having a clean of those folds every day, just to make sure that you don't get to that point.
And can it just be as simple as wiping it down with some wipes, or do you have to bathe it? Or
it can be as simple as taking a wipe, popping your finger in there and having a quick clean out. Same with ears as well, actually. Those are areas that we don't think of classically as being part of the skin, but they tend to get affected as well. So it's in the same way you could use a bit of ear cleaner or pop a finger down there with a wipe just to get any wax out. Do the same with the face. Yeah,
because as I was saying with Skye, she'll get a small hives, and you can see them on her body because she's short hair, but then she does the ear flap. And with having really long ears, that's very loud and noticeable. So ears is absolutely really key, isn't it?
Definitely. And particularly for breeds like Skye with the floppy ears, because again, that stops the air circulation. So things get warmer and more moist. So things like breeds like Spaniels as well. It's good to think about keeping ears clean for them.
Yeah. So Joii being remote and online, how can you help successfully manage skin conditions online?
Great question. Particularly for those allergic pets, we can really help. Before even getting to allergy, we can really help understand if your pet is dealing with that or if it is a different problem. So skin conditions are really visual. If you can take some pictures and upload them and share them with our vets, we can have a look at that and start to get an indication based on what that looks like and where it is on your pet as to what the problem might be. So, for example, a flea allergic dermatitis on a cat is usually around the ears and the back of the neck, and also at that little spot on their rump just above their tail, where they love a good scratch. Those are the areas you usually see sores and scabs. Whereas a pet like Skye, if she's having a flare-up from her food, if she's had something she shouldn't have, you're probably going to see that maybe on her face, on her paws, or on her tummy. So even just the location of those kind of lesions can tell us a lot.
Yeah, fab. And then if you think your pet might have a skin condition, what's the best thing to do?
Definitely talk to a vet.
Yep.
Get an understanding with a really thorough history with your vet as to what the problem is going to be. That might be that you need to go into practice and do some testing, but be prepared for the words allergic skin condition and be prepared that might mean a lifelong problem that you need to manage. So this is not something we give a tablet to and it fixes. This is something we have to deal with. It's like hay fever. You might take an antihistamine to help keep the sneezing down, but that's not going to make it go away completely. You have to learn what your triggers are and how to avoid them. Yeah. So we're going to need to look at diet, we're going to need to look at environment, we're going to need to look at where and how when you walk. So I think be ready for a long sit down and a long call conversation. But there are so many things we can do.
Yeah. And like we've already said, from Skye's perspective, it's, as long as we know what the triggers are, we know how to manage it. But there are other conditions are really lifelong. There's ways to manage it, but there's no cure necessarily.
Exactly. So for dogs, particularly with allergic skin disease, we like to take what we call a multimodal approach to supporting them, which covers a number of key areas. So first would be diet, which obviously for Skye, we've found that if we take those triggers away, that's massive. That's going to keep her happy, and there's nothing else really we're likely to need to do for her. So often your vet will recommend a diet trial of some kind. The only way to know for certain if your dog is allergic to food is to basically do what is called an elimination diet. So put them on a diet that has no allergens in it for at least 4 to 6 weeks, and then challenge them again with what we think might be the problem.
So you can work out what it is that's triggering.
Exactly.
If it is that.
And that challenge is important too. If you pop them on a diet and it's working, it might be that you've done something different in the background as well. You might have changed where you walk. You might have changed your shampoo. If you're not thinking about it, 100 of the little things can get involved. So having that kind of challenge where we go, okay, I'm going to re-give you what I think might be the problem, your sausage or your chicken or the old diet you used to be on, really confirms that for you. Great. And I know that might mean your pet itches for a couple of days, but once we know that is the problem, we go back onto that restricted diet and we go, okay, this is what we're going to have to do for the long haul. So that can feel like an expensive and difficult thing to have to wrap your head around sometimes, but it really is so key, is really a first step. Diet allergies account for only something like 17% of dogs. at most, it's a very difficult thing to quantify. So pure food allergies is around 10 to 17% of dogs with allergic skin disease, but it can be a component in up to 50% of dogs.
Okay.
So if you get that right, that can make management a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next thing to look at is providing a really healthy skin barrier for your pet. So we would often recommend skin supplements.
Okay.
And we think of the skin as like a brick wall. Think of it as a barrier. It's stopping allergens getting through to your pet and triggering an immune response. If the mortar starts to crack, and that's the skin oil, a healthy skin oil, then those allergens are going to sneak through. If we can supplement with a really good omega-based skin supplement, we can remortar that wall, and then that itch isn't going to happen. Those allergens don't get through and irritate your pet's immune
system. You provide that protection from inside out.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would then put on the outside as well?
So grooming and skincare is also really important. Now, as a rule, in most pets, you don't need to be washing your pet on a really regular basis. If anything, that will strip some of the oils out. For itchy dogs who are struggling, we might actually flip that on its head a little bit and wash on a more regular basis, at least while we're getting everything under control. So when the skin is irritated and your pet is itching, you will then get secondary infections. They scratch themselves, it's natural, that breaks the barrier further, and all those normal bacteria that would live on the skin go a bit wild and take their chance. So at that point, we're likely to find something that is going to deal with that bacteria, with any yeast as well that is on the skin, and probably recommend washing maybe 3 times a week when it's at its worst, and then taking that down to once a week, and then reducing that down to what is appropriate for your pet. And if your pet doesn't love a bath, it might not be a full wash, it might be a mousse or a spray that we can use in between, but sometimes they do need that bath to start with.
Just to help manage that.
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot there about, Skye and what she experiences, but she's just one breed.
Yes.
So do we see it being more prevalent in any particular breeds?
So we talked about French bulldogs earlier and their foldy faces. They are one of the most common culprits that we see. I know some of the staff at Joii will spend whole shifts just talking to French bulldogs that are itchy. And it seems to be something that is really prevalent in that breed, and it can start as early as 6 months of age. Now, we typically think of allergies as starting to show around a year to 18 months, but we are starting to see them appearing even younger. So if you've got a young dog and they're starting to itch, and that's being quite a regular thing from about 6 months on, please talk to your vet as soon as you can. Particularly food allergies, we think, are starting to get a bit sooner.
So you just touched on age there. So it can come as young as 6 months. But what about later on in life? Does age play a part for older pets, or if you're going to get a skin condition, would it develop early enough, or can it happen later?
So it is a genetic predisposition to being allergic. So often we do see these things around 1 to 3 years is when we generally expect them to start to appear. But like I've said, that is creeping a little earlier. That doesn't mean you couldn't make a change in a 10-year-old dog's life, and maybe change their diet or their flea treatment, and actually these things will start to appear. But it is usually in younger pets.
So if you have just bought a new dog home or a cat home and they have a skin condition, or they've just developed one, you touched on a few things there. Obviously, food is going to be vital. But what are the key elements of support that you're going to need to give that pet in the future?
So food is a great one. We won't cover that anymore. We've talked about it plenty. Another one is getting on a really decent flea and tick regime and worm regime for your pet, because all of those creepy critters all like to be friends. We want to keep them all out.
Itching again as soon as you talk about fleas.
Sorry, I'm ruining everybody's day. But yes, make sure that you talk to your vet about the best flea, tick and worm protocol for your pet. It's going to be different depending on your lifestyle and how often you walk, and whether Skye likes to go and eat things she shouldn't out and about in the fields. But that is really key, because what we essentially need to do is keep that pet's itch threshold down. So fleas, infections, food triggers, pollens, all the things that lead to an itchy dog. There's almost a barrier at which point if you overflow their cup, they will start to itch. We need to keep it down. So that's a really easy one that you can keep under the barrier and help make that load lower for them.
Fantastic. So let's flip this. What about prevention? How important is it for people to have a really good skin and coat regime for their pet?
I think it's important to really understand it. I think particularly if you have a breed that is prone to a skin problem, like a French Bulldog, a couple of others. I mean, Bulldogs, Staffordshire Bull Terriers, Labradors are really bad for allergic skin problems. Then I think the first thing is educate yourself when you are looking at bringing a pet home. And know what your problems are going to be and how much of a lifelong commitment that is.
Yeah.
And then if you do have a breed that is likely to have problems, you need to really understand what that might take in terms of grooming and care to make sure that you're keeping them as happy and healthy as possible. So some examples: ear cleaning in a Spaniel or a Labrador. Really starting early on to get them used to that. It's not the most pleasant experience for every pet, particularly if it's itchy, you're putting something wet down there and you're messing around. Get them used to cleaning and make sure you're doing that kind of once a week, a couple of times a week, depending on your pet. Again, we talked about grooming and bathing, getting them used to the concept of having a wash in whatever form it has to be. Like I said, again, it's going to depend on the pet. You probably don't want to be bathing your dog more than, well, every couple of months or whenever they're really, really dirty. If you don't have to. The natural oils in that coat don't want stripping out. But you should always get them used to the experience in case you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked the other day about rolling in fox poo.
Exactly.
So that's a key reason for bathing.
It is indeed.
So are there, what other than scratching and itching, what are the other kind of key signs that people need to look out for? Are there hot spots typically for skin conditions to start appearing?
Yeah, so hot spots are actually a type of actual lesion and we see on the skin, a type of kind of crusty, oozy, horrible spot, particularly usually seen on the sides of the face or the neck when dogs are trying to itch their ears if they have ear involvement in their skin problems. Skin lesions are the main ones, so looking for scabs, sores, oozy bits, redness as well. And you can start to see if your dog has been struggling for a while or your cat has been struggling for a while, that the skin starts to look thicker, almost wrinkled, and can start to take on pigment. So it'll start to look a little bit darker or blacker in some pets.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Also, changes in your pet's behaviour. If you think about it, if you were all hot and itchy and bothered all the time, I'm sure you would be grumpy. I know I would. Exactly.
Definitely.
So if you start to see that your pet isn't acting like themselves, they're kind of off. So that's another symptom.
Yeah.
But also, particularly if they've got a kind of dietary intolerance or allergy, that you can also see upset tummies. So diarrhea or looser stool, occasional vomiting, or actually a lot of wind. Your dog might fart, it might not smell nice. You can see that too.
Yeah.
Or scooting around on the floor, that's another one. So if they're having trouble with their anal glands.
Yeah, okay. So we touched on earlier around washing. Yes. What about grooming? So are there better brushes for particular breeds? How often should you be brushing them? Again, is it just down to each individual pet?
The answer will be yes. Yeah, there's always going to be a bit of individuality there. I think the brush that works for your pet very much depends on not just their coat, but their behaviour and how happy they are with brushing. Some are quite open to everything. Others will only prefer one kind of sensation. You can get everything from big paddle brushes through to kind of big metal rakes, which are good for the kind of double-coated or thick-coated breeds. It's what works for you and your pet. What I would say is, particularly for cat owners as well, get them used to it from an early age.
Yeah.
I forgot about that one with my kitten. So about 6 months, I thought, we should get him used to this. Saw the hairbrush and he ran. So that's been a really slow process of getting his trust back and getting him to enjoy that sensation. And now he'll sit for half an hour and let you brush him, as long as you touch the right spots. He's pretty happy.
Is Smarty a long hair cat?
He's, you'd probably say, a medium hair cat.
Okay.
But yeah, he does have a tendency to a longer coat. And he does shed like crazy.
Okay.
So I try to brush him at least for 5 minutes once a week, just to try and get control of some of that hair.
Yeah, so it's not distributed all across the house.
Exactly. If there is one thing you were going to do in your grooming regime on a regular basis, I would suggest brushing. It keeps that dead coat coming out so your pet's skin can breathe, allows that new hair to come through, and it saves you a lot of hoovering as well.
Yep, absolutely. So just on the whole cats piece, I know we've talked about dogs. I had cats when I was growing up, but they were short-haired cats, so they really kind of took care of their own coats.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot more now where there's access to videos for longer hair cats that then are also being bathed. Now, I didn't even know that this was a thing, and I would assume going anywhere near them, you would need a full almost hazmat suit to try and get them anywhere near water. But can cats enjoy a bath, and should you be bathing cats?
Some cats love a bath. They're probably the exception to the rule, let's be fair.
Okay.
I know that I would need to put on some fairly serious armour if I was trying to bath my cat. But again, washing is cats don't hate water.
Yep.
Washing can be done when you need to. Does every cat need a bath? No. The same as dogs. They have natural oils in their skin that keep that barrier and that skin and hair coat nice and clean. They also, if you notice, I'm sure you noticed with your cats when you were younger, that they groom a lot.
Yes.
They seem to spend half their day sat there getting themselves looking just right, and then they get annoyed when we go along and stroke them and ruin all their hard work.
Yep.
They also tend to dust bath as well, especially cats that go outside. So they keep themselves clean in different ways. But if your pet is particularly struggling, maybe with a flea allergy, your cat, then at that point you're likely to need to bathe them in some form. There are a lot of mousses and wipes and sprays out on the market these days, so that you don't necessarily need to put the gauntlets on and try and get them in the bath with you.
Great advice there. Thanks, Sam. I know we touched on right at the beginning about different seasons.
Yes.
And a winter coat and almost a summer coat. But do they have an impact? Do the seasons have an impact on the condition of coats?
It can do, and it can really impact on conditions that affect the skin and the coat as well. So some pets have allergic dermatitis that we would say is just allergic. It's going to happen all year round. They're sensitive to dust mites or pork. It doesn't make a difference. Other pets, particularly those that are only allergic to certain pollens, you'll see a seasonal pattern.
Okay.
So all winter they're fine, and then in summer it flares up. So it's not necessarily just about the coat. It can be about the triggers for the problems that they're having.
Okay, thanks, Sam. And then just talking about kind of threats to their skin, can dogs and cats get sunburnt?
They can, definitely, yes, the same as us, particularly white-coated breeds. So white cats can be particularly prone on the tips of their ears or the tip of their nose. So there are pet sun creams out there.
Okay.
I did grow up with a couple of bulldogs who had to have the whole of their face covered in sun cream in winter. They were quite thin-coated. So yes, tummies as well are quite lightly haired. So if your dog loves a good sunbathe, it's worth putting a bit of pet-friendly sun cream on there in the summer.
Lovely. And then we've already talked about how important a good flea and tick regime is.
Yes.
Is that seasonal, or should really that be all year round?
Really should be all year round. So fleas and ticks were traditionally thought of as a summer problem, but as we, I suppose, have domesticated pets and brought them indoors with the central heating, they can be a problem all year round, particularly when our pets are living in such populous areas and there's a lot of wildlife in the garden. Also, your cat probably goes out and meets 10 other cats in some way, shape or form.
Yep.
So they do share, unfortunately. In this case, sharing is not caring. So yes, a good regime all year round is definitely what I'd recommend.
Great. Thanks, Sam. So moving on to paws and claws now. So, and I'm assuming, again, this might be different dog, cat, maybe even by breed, but how often or how quickly do claws tend to grow?
Claws grow constantly, a bit like our nails. So exactly like our nails. They're just thicker and a little bit sturdier. So they're constantly growing, and actually 9 out of 10 cases, a cat or dog will wear them down themselves. So dogs will wear them down as they walk, particularly on things like pavement or concrete, where they're getting a good bit of abrasion. It'll just kind of almost act like a nail file for them. And cats will scratch. So cats like to keep their claws nice and sharp. It's kind of in their behaviour and their natural kind of coding to keep them ready for hunting. So they'll scratch, and that's one of the key reasons you should always have a scratching post for your cat, so that they don't decide to do that with your furniture.
Yeah, save your furniture and make sure that they have a post. So if they do need clipping because they're not filing down, how often should you look at doing that, or just as and when they get too long? It's
really going to depend on your pet and also the reason that they need to be clipped. So maybe, and you've got an older dog who doesn't go for such long walks. Maybe they're a little arthritic and they prefer the softer ground.
Yep.
You're probably going to need a regular clip to keep those claws short. Probably not as often as most people think. So it is one thing we do see, I think all vets see across the country, that people will book in for a nail clip and actually they only need the tiniest little bit taking off. There is something called a quick in a nail, which is a little blood vessel and a nerve. They are living structures, and we'd only ever clip the bit beyond that wouldn't cause your pet any pain.
And I think that's one of the key things for owners, right, is understanding where that quick is and then how far to cut them. It's the nerve piece around that, because I know from Skye's perspective, she's got dark nails.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to identify where that quick ends.
It is. It's really hard, and it's very nerve-wracking, the idea of clipping that at home and causing her any discomfort or pain. You don't want to do that, right? If it's going to happen by accident, make sure it's somebody else and she doesn't associate that with you.
Yeah.
But yes, it can be really tricky. The best thing I can suggest is, if you are in a situation where you do need to do that, speak to your vet, get some guidance, because it will vary for every pet. Some have much longer blood vessels and nerves than others, and what is normal will depend on your pet.
So say I've gone through all that process, but I'm now cutting her nails and I've accidentally caught a quick. What do I do at that point?
Great question. So it will look horrible. I'll tell you that. The blood vessel is quite big. It will look like a war zone.
Okay.
But actually, the amount of bleeding and the amount of blood that's actually coming out of there is nowhere near as bad as it looks. They just like to scare us, if I'm honest. So the best thing you can do in that instance is apply some pressure. So a cloth or some cotton wool, something like that, pop it on the end of that nail and just apply some pressure for a few minutes.
Yep.
You might need to get somebody to help you hold Skye still, or your pet still in that instance, because they're not going to be happy. They're going to want to wriggle. They'll feel better a lot faster than you think they will. It's almost like us pricking a finger or spraining an ankle, immediate little ouch, and then actually often these things fade quite quickly. And then if within kind of 5 to 10 minutes that bleeding isn't stopping, at that point I'd suggest either giving a Joii vet a ring or talking to your vet in practice. Often a bit of a bathe and some pressure will fix the problem. If you are having to clip nails on a regular basis, you can actually get little cautery methods that you can buy online to help stop anything from bleeding. But actually pressure will often do the job.
Yeah. And are there any other things? So I've seen that you can get like nail file grinders. Are they just as effective, or?
They can do the job. I think getting a pet that's patient enough to sit there and have a manicure.
A manicure, yeah.
Yep, that's a little bit dependent on the individual. What I would say is, every pet is different. There's so many products on the market. Unless there is a genuine need, though, you shouldn't need to really touch your nails on a regular basis. Yep. The one thing I would say is, as pets get really old, often those dew claws, the ones that aren't touching the floor, might start to curl around if your pet isn't keeping their grooming up to date. And when they get a little bit older, they might need assistance there. Cats, I would not recommend clipping the claws unless you genuinely have to. Because not only is it not the best experience for you or your cat, they're just going to go and sharpen them up again. That's what they do by nature. So again, unless it's something like a dew claw that's starting to ingrow, or they've torn a nail and you need to clip it back.
And do cats have quicks as well as part of their...
They do, yes. Luckily, a lot of them will have clearer nails so you can see, but it's exactly the same. We wouldn't take any more off than what is pain-free and appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. And then just focusing then on paws.
Yes.
What are some of the key things that you need to look out for? Because I know grass seeds can be a real pain in the bum. Yeah. Or the paw, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. So grass seeds and any kind of little bit of grit, dirt, sticks, leaves, whatever your pet's playing with, can get stuck in between toes and cause a little bit of irritation. You'll often notice they start to lick. So it's worth a good look and a little bit of a wash in between the toes if you need to. Get your finger in there and just have a clean out. The thing about grass seeds, particularly kind of summer into autumn as harvest is out, if you're walking through the fields, is they can start to work their way in through the skin and get stuck in the delicate webbing between the toes, which point you tend to have a little bit more of a problem on your hand. You can get a swelling, you can get infection, and they're really irritating for your pet. Yeah, some of them will work their way straight back out, which is nice, but they'll lick and they'll dislodge it, but often at that point you'll need to see your vet to get a bit of support. We've seen quite a few this year, I believe, that are needing a little bit of a procedure to get that grass seed out, and the relief when they wake up, It's wonderful.
It's nice to, because it's what's been causing them that pain is now gone, which is great. So what about cuts on paws? What are the kind of key things that you need in your medical kit to be able to help with minor cuts, obviously not major cuts?
Yeah, of course. I think it's worth saying if you've got anything deep or your pet's stood on a piece of glass, anything like that, please talk to your vet. Paw pads are some of the trickiest things to deal with. Often you'll go into your vets and they'll get cleaned out and flushed out properly if they have got a proper wound.
Yeah.
But they're unlikely to stitch it unless it genuinely needs it, which is a rare case, because actually your pet's going to walk. It's tough skin. It's a bit like trying to deal with a nail, really. It's quite thick skin. And those stitches are likely to come out as your dog walks around. So in minor cases where maybe they've grazed themselves or they've got a little bit of a wound where they've stood on something sharp, you can just clean. That is the main thing. If you don't have a disinfectant, then salt water is the best place to start.
Okay.
But a good cleaner, you can get so many on the market these days that are really good, usually kind of chlorhexidine based, that will give you a really good clean and get rid of any chance of infection, or at least minimize it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend bandaging. It can be really hard to do right.
Yeah.
Your pet's not the biggest fan of it, let's be fair. They're going to try and flick it off, which makes it a moving target, which is harder. And done really wrong, you can actually cause more harm than good. You can cause pressure sores and swelling. So if you want to pop a little dressing on there, just kind of hold it on with some light pressure. If there is any bleeding or soreness or rawness, that's fine. If your pet is licking a lot, the best thing to do is something like a cotton sock over there, just to stop them doing that, or the dreaded cone of shame, the buster collar, if they really are persistent, at which point, again, if you get into that point, you probably should be speaking to your vet.
Yeah, okay. So then, talking about damaged paws, obviously one of the key things from a summer perspective is burnt paws.
Yeah.
So, we recently found out about the temperatures that artificial grass can get up to in the summer.
Yeah.
So how common are burnt paws, and what are the things that you need to be really checking in the summer?
Good question. How common are they? Not as common as the internet might make out. And the reason for that is your dog's not daft. They know what's uncomfortable to walk on. You're going to get the old overexcited one that is too busy running after a ball or thinking about the end goal, maybe a treat wherever you're going, to kind of think about the temperature. Now, my rule of thumb on concrete or artificial grass or anything that's going to heat up would be, for you as an owner, pop your hand on there. Try and hold it for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
If it's uncomfortable for you, it's uncomfortable for your pet's feet.
Okay.
So think about different ways of walking. That might be taking your pet in the car, carrying them to the car if you need to over a hot driveway, and then taking them to the beach or to a field, whether in the grass or into the woodlands instead. The key things to look out for would be a pet that's really reluctant to walk. They will almost hop and move a little bit more. You might notice them shifting their weight. And then if you do think that they've hurt themselves, have a little look at their feet. Maybe don't touch the feet, just have a look, because they will be raw and sore. Look for any colour change or any change in the surface of the skin. And if you do see anything like that, you can cool them off in some nice cold water. Yeah. But then again, please do speak to a vet just to find out what the next steps are. Yeah.
And that's their body language of going, this is too hot.
Hot. Bit like us if we're in bare feet and you're walking to the pool on holiday. Yeah. You'll do a quick little jog. You won't let your feet sit for too long on that surface. So, they'll behave exactly the same.
And when do you need to start worrying about pads? Because, Skye's pads are rough, right? Yeah. But she needs to be able to walk on them. It would be like walking barefoot for me, and the skin toughening up over time. But when should you be worried about cracks or dryness on the pads?
Great question. So their feet are designed, dogs and cats, they've got nice tough pads designed to be used as, like you said, bare feet, in the way that ours would toughen up if we all went barefoot. You only really need to worry if you notice that there is a problem for them. So that will be, often you'll notice behaviour, changing patterns. So reluctance to walk, or shifting their feet, or holding one leg up if it's causing an issue. Yeah. And then have a look and see if there's anything that's out of the ordinary. So probably worth making sure you know what looks normal for your pet. Yes. And then you can compare. Lovely. You'll see maybe a change in texture or colour, or if they've caught themselves and hurt themselves, you'll see that wound.
Yeah. And then flipping from summer to winter, what about salt? What kind of impact can grit and salt have on paws?
So it shouldn't cause too much trouble in most cases. However, if the gritter has just been by and there's a nice thick layer, that grit and salt can cause almost a stingy burny sensation, which we don't want to leave on our pet's paws for too long. So just worth having a little wash off if you know that has been laid recently when you get back from your walk.
And I've seen on the internet, a lot of people are now moving. I say a lot of people, it's probably a few people, because there's no way I'd ever get Skye in a pair of shoes. But what about shoes? Do they really need them, or is this just a personal preference?
I think it's a great option. Will most dogs require them? Or definitely not cats. Let's face it, if you're trying to put boots on your cat, you're a very brave human being, and they're not going to love you for it.
Boots and cats and boots and cats. Yeah, no, you can't.
Love your beatboxing.
Yeah.
Will most dogs need them? No. They are really designed to be used if your pet has a medical problem.
Yeah.
And it needs to be covered for any length of time. Or maybe if we're talking about those dogs that live in really harsh winter conditions and are struggling on their feet. Some of them will tolerate it, others won't. So I think it's an option for you if you need it. It wouldn't be my first thought. If your pet is perfectly healthy feet and you live somewhere like the UK where winters are relatively mild, you shouldn't need them.
Yeah, I remember when Charlie, my mum's dog, had a problem with one of his back feet.
Yeah.
And he had to wear a boot for a little while so that it didn't do any damage as he was out walking. And he absolutely hated it. He didn't want to put it down. And so, I couldn't imagine
hold
him
their foot
for
out
fun.
of the way, or you'll see them walking down the road trying to flick it off as they go. They're not fans. It's not natural for them. And you can't explain. So not like you or I choosing to put a brace on or a boot on if we've got a problem. It's something we're kind of almost imposing on them, and they kind of go, hang on, what's going on? I don't like this.
Yeah. And you touched on socks earlier to help pets from removing bandages.
Yes.
Are there any top tips on socks to be able to help them stop doing that?
Yeah, there's a couple of lovely hacks going around online at the moment where, for smaller dogs particularly, you can take a oversized sports sock, maybe your husband's or your partner's, cut that down, almost split it along the top, so you're cutting down the sock length, and then pop it onto their foot and tie it over their shoulder, which makes it a little bit easier to keep on when they're trying to pull that off and get to whatever's lovely and itchy underneath. Other things would be a little bit of kind of micropore tape or sports tape around the top just to hold it on, but again, best done under some supervision from a vet or a nurse, just to make sure you're not doing it too tight. Or covering it over. I know I grew up with a golden retriever. She had a lot of problems with grass seeds and sores between her toes. So we'd often try things like boots and things as she got older and her feet were sorer. The best thing that actually worked for us was a sock tied on with a little shoelace at the top.
Okay.
Yeah, just fold the sock over the top. And then covering that over with a bag or something if we were out and about so that she didn't get that wet. You can be creative. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fancy boots. I mean, as simple as a sock with a bag can help solve the problem. So just touching on cats again. What about cats' paws? They're designed in the same way, I'm assuming, so that they can...
Yeah, they're lovely and tough. They're designed to be out, not just going, across the grass and different terrain, but also climbing as well. So again, 99% of cases, you shouldn't need to cover them. And like I said, I think anyone trying to put boots on their cats is very brave.
And then how can Joii help in that situation? So go, okay, I've noticed something on Fluffy's paw.
Yep, again, paws are skin. Skin is a very visual thing to look at. Take a picture or a video if your pet's acting differently. You think it might be a problem with their foot. Send it through to us and we can have a look at that and we can help with a little bit of questioning and understanding of what's going on with your pet, and those pictures at hand really understand, do you need to do something about this or is this normal for your pet?
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about the video being taken in a natural environment for the pet, right? Because they're not changing behaviours because they're in a strange environment, maybe in the vet's office, as an example.
Exactly, Patricia. So think about a cat as an example. You take them to the vets and they freeze in the corner. They're pretending they're not there because they want to go home. Very hard to see their behaviour, particularly walking, if we're trying to check if a foot's happy or there's anything we need to deal with, if a problem is making them limp or lame or is causing any pain. At home, you can take that video. or you can show us walking around your house, your garden, how your pet is behaving, how your cat is behaving. So it's really so beneficial in those instances to be able to do that veterinary consultation from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah. I did see online, actually, just talking about the limping piece, I did see that an owner ended up on, I don't know if you've seen this, but an owner ended up on crutches, and the dog started to mimic the behaviour. So was then holding the paw up and copying the owner. And after ages of looking into this, why has the dog got this limp now? It was actually just mimicking the owner's behaviour, which is phenomenal.
I've not seen it myself, but I've heard a couple of cases like this where pets almost not just necessarily mimicking their owners if they've got a problem, but also associating, oh, well, if I do hurt my foot and I limp, I get extra sympathy and extra treats. So what if I do it again? Does that happen? It can run up some vet bills if you're not savvy as to why your dog's behaving like that. But yes.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It is. So, Sam, just to start wrapping this up, it's been a fantastic episode, but what are the top 3 priorities that you would say, don't give up at this time of year, make sure that you continue to do to keep your pet healthy?
Great question. I know we've all been thinking about our finances in the last couple of years, and actually that is changing how people think about their veterinary care and their pet's care. I think the first thing would be to make sure your pet's on a good diet. There's so many out there on the market that really can impact your pet's health so much to feed them a good quality balanced diet. It can actually save you a lot of money in the long run to invest well. So a good lean body weight as well and a good balanced diet can reduce the risk of heart disease. It can reduce the risk of arthritis. It can reduce the risk of diabetes. So make sure that you've done your research, talk to your vet if you need to, and that the diet that you choose is good quality for your pet.
Yep.
I'd also make sure that you keep up your flea and tick treatments.
Yep.
That's not one to be scrimping on, because not only if you miss it will your pet suffer, but he'll be bringing hitchhikers home with him.
No.
Nobody needs that in their
again.
house. Exactly. I'll move on before we all start to scratch. And the last one would be to really think about your insurance and what it means for you in the long run before you think about cancelling that policy. I know that it's difficult to see that money going out every month and think, well, actually right now it's not benefiting me. But when your pet needs that care and that big vet bill appears, it's just invaluable. So have a look at different policies, make sure you understand your level of cover, change it if you need to, but don't get rid of it.
Lovely. Thanks, Sam. And then just your final top tip of or hack that you've seen around that healthy coat and making sure that you keep that healthy.
Teach your pet to let you brush them, and don't try and get them in the bath every day.
So thanks, Sam, for coming in for a walk in the park with animal friends.
No problem.
I will see you again for our Joii Christmas special.
Can't wait.
Thank you to all of our listeners. You can find out news about our podcast on our Instagram or TikTok handles, which is at Animal Friends Insurance, or on our Facebook page at Animal Friends Pet Insurance.